Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. It was late, much later than I should have been awake. The house was quiet, save for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall and the faint rustling of leaves outside my window. I sat curled up on the couch, an old blanket draped over me as I sipped my warm cup of tea. It had been a long day, and though I knew I should be heading to bed, there was a strange restlessness I couldn't shake. The house felt empty without him. My husband, Greg, had been out with his friend, Jake, for most of the evening. They had been friends for years, thick as thieves, always joking, always laughing, always sharing stories from their pasts that I had learned to listen to, but never really be a part of. It wasn't that I didn't like Jake. I did. He was kind, funny, and had a way of making everyone feel comfortable. But he was always just a little bit of a mystery to me. There was something about him, something deeper, that never quite added up. That night, I never expected the conversation that would unfold. It was nearly midnight when I heard the door creak open. I looked up and saw Jake standing in the doorway, his silhouette outlined by the dim light from the hallway. Greg had fallen asleep on the couch after their night out, and I hadn't expected Jake to stay for much longer. But here he was, standing in front of me, his hands stuffed in his pockets. His eyes met mine, and for a brief moment there was a shift, a subtle, unspoken understanding between us. Something had changed in the air. "Hey," he said, his voice a little rough from the night out. "Didn't want to just leave. I thought maybe we could talk for a bit." I nodded, setting my cup down and patting the spot next to me on the couch. "Sure, Jake. What's on your mind?" He hesitated for a moment, almost like he was weighing whether or not he should say what was on his mind. His eyes flicked over to Greg, still sound asleep, then back to me. The tension in the room thickened. I could feel it, this strange pull, this moment hanging between us. He sighed deeply, running a hand through his disheveled hair before finally speaking. "You ever feel like you don't really know someone?" "Not really." I leaned back into the couch, trying to settle into the sudden intensity of the conversation. Of course, everyone has their secrets, don't they? Even the closest people. Jake let out a quiet laugh, though it sounded more like a breath of release than amusement. "Yeah, but what if those secrets are bigger than you ever expected? What if the person you think you know isn't who you thought they were at all?" I could feel my heart start to race. His words, though casually spoken, carried a weight I wasn't prepared for. I'd known Jake for years, but this felt different. He wasn't just speaking about himself, I could tell. There was something more, something unsaid. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the answer, but curiosity had a way of pushing boundaries. Jake shifted, turning slightly toward me. There was a flicker in his eyes, a flicker of something darker, deeper. Something hidden just beneath the surface. "I guess I just think there are things we don't talk about," he said, his voice lower now, more serious. "Things we bury so deep that not even we know they're there. And when it all comes out, well, it changes everything." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I felt the weight of his words settle over me. What was he getting at? What was he trying to tell me? I could feel myself leaning in, drawn to the conversation, yet not fully sure I was ready to hear it. "Jake," I started slowly, unsure how to proceed. "What do you mean? What are you trying to say?" He looked at me for a moment longer, and in that moment I saw something in his eyes that startled me. It wasn't fear or concern. It was something more primal, more intense. He was holding on to something he couldn't keep to himself any longer. and I knew, deep down, that what he was about to say would change everything. "I'm talking about Greg," he said, his words soft, but they hit me like a slap. "There's something about him, something I've never told you." My heart dropped into my stomach. I stared at Jake, trying to make sense of his words. What could he possibly be talking about? Greg was my husband. We had been married for almost 20 years. We'd built a life together. Sure, we'd had our ups and downs, like any couple, but there were no secrets between us. Or at least, I thought there weren't. "Jake, what are you saying?" My voice cracked, betraying the sudden tension building in my chest. "What's going on?" He exhaled sharply, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that felt almost too much to bear. "I don't know how to say this, but Greg's been hiding something from you. Something he's been carrying for a long time. And I think you deserve to know the truth." My mind raced, 1,000 thoughts flooding through me at once. What could he be talking about? What kind of secret could Greg be hiding? Why was Jake telling me this now, in the dead of night, when everything felt like it was shifting beneath me? The room seemed to grow colder, and I could hear the faint sound of Greg's breathing in the background. I couldn't help but feel a tightness in my chest, as if everything I knew about my life was suddenly being questioned, examined under a harsh light. Jake's voice broke through the silence, softer this time. "It's not my place to say, but I think you need to hear it from him. I think you need to know. I won't tell you more. You have to ask him yourself." And just like that, the weight of the moment hung between us. There were no more words, no more explanations. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what had just been revealed to me. But the question lingered in the air, unanswered. What was the secret my husband had been hiding? The silence in the room felt suffocating. Jake's words hung heavy in the air, each one a painful echo, and I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I knew about Greg, everything I trusted, was now crumbling at the edges. I glanced over at Greg, still deep in sleep, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. My mind raced, torn between confronting him now or waiting for the right moment. But what if I never got that moment? What if Jake was right? What if Greg had been hiding something all along? I felt a sharp pang of unease as I stood up, pacing the room in a frantic blur. My thoughts were jumbled, each one overlapping the other, tumbling over the possibility of what this secret could be. Had Greg been having an affair? Was there something in his past he'd never told me about? My pulse quickened as 1,000 scenarios played out in my mind, each one more distressing than the last. Jake, sensing my turmoil, remained silent, watching me with a mixture of concern and resignation in his eyes. I didn't want to look at him. His involvement in this, the way he was holding back, felt like a betrayal, even though he claimed to be looking out for me. He knew more than he was willing to admit, and that uncertainty gnawed at me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I turned to face him. "Jake," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "what does Greg have to do with this? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He let out a long breath, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you. It's not easy, you know. Greg's been through a lot, and I don't know if it's my place to drag all that out into the light. But you deserve to know. He's my best friend, and I can't keep something this big from you." I shook my head, still reeling. But why now? Why tell me at all? If it was so bad, why wait until the middle of the night? Jake's eyes softened. "Because it's been eating at me. And seeing you with him, knowing what I know, I can't just sit back and watch you go through this without any answers. I don't want to see you hurt." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but it was impossible. There were too many unanswered questions, too much hanging in the balance. I couldn't help but wonder if Jake was trying to protect me, or if there was more to his story than he was letting on. "Do you think I should confront him now?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Jake didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the floor, his brow furrowed. "I think you should, but I also think it might change everything. It's a lot to take in, and you'll need time to process it. You have to decide what you want to do with this, but I don't think you can just pretend nothing's wrong." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. The idea of confronting Greg, of digging into something that might tear us apart, was terrifying. But the longer I waited, the more I felt like I was running from the truth, and I couldn't keep doing that. I needed answers. Before I could speak again, Jake stood up from the couch, his expression unreadable. "I'm going to head out. I've said all I can, and now it's up to you. Just take care of yourself, okay?" I barely nodded, too lost in my thoughts to respond properly. He gave me one last, lingering look before slipping out the door, leaving me alone with the quiet hum of the night and the growing storm inside my chest. I walked back to the couch, sitting down slowly, as if the act of sitting could somehow slow my racing heart. My thoughts circled, each one more disorienting than the last. Was Jake right? Was there really something I didn't know about my own husband? Had I missed the signs? Was I so blind to the person I shared my life with? It felt like the room was closing in on me. I glanced over at Greg, his steady breathing a cruel reminder of how things used to be, peaceful, simple, undisturbed. But now it was as though a cloud had settled over everything, and I couldn't see anything clearly. The soft sound of Greg's voice broke through my thoughts. "What's going on, babe?" He mumbled, his eyes still closed. He shifted on the couch, rubbing his face, and slowly sat up. "You okay?" I froze. My stomach turned, and for a brief moment I thought about telling him everything. I could feel my breath catch in my throat, but the words wouldn't come. How could I? How could I bring up what Jake had said when I didn't even know the truth myself? It felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure of what would happen if I stepped forward. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just couldn't sleep." Greg blinked at me, his expression softening with concern. "You're sure? You look a little off." I nodded again, unable to find the right words. What was there to say? How could I explain that everything was suddenly shifting beneath me, and I wasn't sure how to hold on to the life I thought I knew? I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I understood it better. For a moment, Greg just stared at me, his eyes searching mine, but I quickly looked away, unable to hold his gaze. The tension was thick, and I could feel it in my bones. He didn't know what I knew. Not yet, and I didn't know how to tell him. Finally, Greg stood up and stretched. "Well, I'm going to bed. You coming?" I gave him a tight smile. "I'll be in a bit." He nodded, still looking at me like he wanted to say something more, but he didn't. He turned and walked down the hallway, leaving me alone with my thoughts once more. I stayed where I was, sitting in the dimly lit room, my mind racing. I could feel the weight of the secret pressing down on me, suffocating me. I didn't know what Jake had meant. I didn't know what Greg had done, if anything. But I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning of something I couldn't ignore. I had to find out the truth, no matter where it led me. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized. I had no idea just how much my world was about to change. The night stretched on, each minute heavier than the last. I lay awake in bed, the soft rustle of sheets, the only sound breaking the stillness. Every little noise felt like an intrusion on my thoughts. How could I go on pretending that everything was normal? I could hear Greg's steady breathing beside me, and it made the quiet more unbearable. The love I had once felt seemed overshadowed by this gnawing sense of betrayal. But the truth was, I didn't know anything for sure. Not yet. I turned over, glancing at the clock on the nightstand. It was nearly 3 a.m. My body felt exhausted, but my mind wouldn't let me sleep. I thought back to Jake's words, "You deserve to know." But what did that even mean? What could Greg be hiding? Was it something I could ever forgive? Or was it something that would forever change how I saw him? I had to talk to him. There was no other choice. If I let this go on, it would destroy me from the inside. I had to face the truth, whatever it was. The thought of confronting him terrified me, but I couldn't keep running from it. I couldn't go on like this. Slowly, carefully, I slipped out of bed, trying not to disturb Greg. I grabbed my robe from the chair and wrapped it tightly around me. The house was quiet, too quiet, and I felt the weight of my decision hanging in the air like a thick fog. I tiptoed down the hallway to the kitchen, where the faint light of the moon slipped through the windows. I needed time to think, to gather my courage. My hands shook as I poured myself a glass of water. It was almost absurd how something so simple felt so monumental in the moment. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not when I knew something was so wrong. But how did I even start? How did I ask Greg about something so intimate, something so painful? What if I was wrong? What if Jake had misunderstood everything? The thought of accusing him, of shattering everything we had, made my chest tighten. But the longer I waited, the worse the uncertainty became. Just as I was about to sit down at the kitchen table, I heard a creak from behind me. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. I turned slowly, my breath catching. Greg stood in the doorway, his eyes still heavy with sleep, but there was something else there too, something guarded. "Can't sleep either?" he asked quietly, his voice rough with sleep. I stood still, the water glass feeling suddenly too heavy in my hand. His gaze searched mine, as if he was trying to read me, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My throat was tight, and the lump in it seemed to grow with every passing second. How could I tell him what I knew, what I suspected, without completely destroying everything? I stammered, unable to finish the sentence. It was as if all the words I needed were locked behind a wall, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't break through. Greg took a few cautious steps toward me, his face softening. "Hey," he said gently, "you're freaking me out. What's going on?" I swallowed hard, my grip tightening on the glass. "Jake told me something tonight," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Greg's expression shifted immediately, a flicker of something, fear, passing over his face. "Jake?" he repeated, his brow furrowing. What did he say? I met his gaze, but I didn't answer immediately. I wasn't sure I could. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, until I finally spoke again. Jake said, "He said you're hiding something from me. Something big." My voice trembled at the end of the sentence, betraying the fear and vulnerability that I'd been holding back for so long. For a moment, Greg just stared at me, as if he couldn't quite process what I had just said. His face paled slightly, and I saw his jaw tighten, his body stiffening with the weight of the words. "Wait, what do you mean by that?" he asked, his voice suddenly sharp, defensive. Why would he say something like that? "I don't know," I said, my voice breaking. but it's eating at me. I can't just keep pretending that everything is fine when I don't even know what's going on. What is it, Greg? What is this secret? Greg's eyes flicked to the floor, his expression unreadable, and I could feel the tension building between us. The air of the room seemed to grow thick, each second a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. I didn't want you to find out like this, he murmured, his voice lower now, almost regretful. I didn't want to hurt you. My heart skipped a beat, a sense of dread settling deep in my chest. What do you mean? I whispered, my voice barely a breath. Greg didn't look at me. He looked down, his hands trembling slightly as they ran through his hair. I could tell he was struggling with what to say, like the words were trapped somewhere inside him. I waited, my pulse racing, trying to stay calm. Finally, he took a deep breath and looked up at me. It's about Jake, he began. There's something you don't know, something he's been keeping from you, too. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean? What has Jake been hiding? Greg's face hardened, his eyes narrowing. It's not just me. It's us. It's all of us. And if you really want to know the truth, then we need to talk about everything. But you might not like what you hear. The air around us felt electric now, thick with the weight of unspoken truths and uncharted territory. My stomach twisted with anxiety, but I wasn't about to back down. I needed to know. I needed the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Tell me, I said, my voice steady now, despite the turmoil I was feeling. Tell me everything. Greg took another deep breath, his eyes never leaving mine. And in that moment, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Whatever he was about to say, it would change everything. The weight of Greg's words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I felt my breath catch in my chest, a cold shiver running down my spine as I waited for him to continue. I could see the struggle in his eyes, as if he was trying to find the right way to tell me something that might shatter everything we had. Jake, and I. Greg began, his voice low, hesitant. We've been more than just friends for a long time. We've had a lot of history. And I know it's hard to hear, but it's not what you think. The words didn't immediately register in my mind. My mind raced to make sense of what he was saying. History. More than just friends? Was I hearing him right? I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. What do you mean, more than just friends? My voice was barely above a whisper, as if saying the words aloud would make it all real. Greg closed his eyes for a brief moment, like he was steeling himself for something. When he opened them again, there was a deep sadness in them, but also a sincerity I hadn't seen before. We've had a complicated relationship, he said quietly, his words cutting through the air with a kind of finality. It wasn't supposed to go beyond friendship, but it did. And I've carried the guilt of it all these years, not just for me, but for you too. I didn't want to hurt you. I felt my knees weaken beneath me, and I grasped the edge of the counter for support. My mind raced to process what Greg had just confessed. The betrayal wasn't just about something he had done, it was about something he had kept hidden from me for years. The weight of his secret, of his guilt, pressed down on me, suffocating me as I tried to breathe through the shock. So all this time, you and Jake, I couldn't even finish the sentence, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. Greg nodded, his eyes full of regret. It wasn't an affair, not in the way you're thinking. We were never physical, but we shared something. More emotional, something I couldn't explain. It was a bond that went beyond friendship, but it was also a mistake. And I ended it a long time ago, tried to forget it, tried to bury it. But I couldn't escape it. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me, as if everything I thought I knew had suddenly been pulled out from under me. My breath hitched as I struggled to hold it together. What was I supposed to feel? Anger? Betrayal? Or was it something more complicated, like sadness and disbelief? "I didn't want you to find out like this," Greg continued, his voice cracking slightly. "I should have told you sooner, but I didn't know how, and I didn't want to lose you." The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over, and I wiped my face with the back of my hand, trying to keep the sobs from escaping. It wasn't just the truth that hurt. It was the years of trust that had been broken, the love I thought was built on something solid now feeling fragile and uncertain. I didn't say anything for a long moment. I just stood there, absorbing the gravity of what Greg had confessed. My mind screamed at me to run, to leave, to never look back. But something deeper inside me held me in place, a part of me still tethered to the man I had once loved so completely. "I need time to think," I finally